Right, is this working? Seems to be. Jack connected, simple screen recorder going good. Right, minimize, close. Hi, my name's Graham. I'm from the Linux Voice podcast, Linux podcast we've been doing for, I don't know, about 8 years now. During that 8 years, I've gone on to some length about how I use KDE, sometimes to some criticism, sometimes to some support. And I've always promised to kind of do a demo of how I use KDE and what my KDE looks like. And this is going to be that demo. I'm going to try and keep things quick because I imagine I could probably talk at great length and become incredibly boring. I've used KDE since like 1999. This is not about evangelizing how great KDE is over all the other desktops. I still use Unity, XFCE, GNOME. They're all great in their own way, or they all have their uses, but it's KDE that I go back to time and time again. It isn't really about evangelizing it. It's about, this is what I find useful in it. These are the kind of things that I find difficult to replicate in other desktops, or the things that I've got used to. And so this is actually my desktop. I've had to constrain it a little bit. It's running at 1080p resolution, and I've had to make things bigger because I'm assuming that once this is compressed and put on the internet, it's going to be a lot less visible. So I've had to make things larger than I would ordinarily. My real environment is wider and a higher resolution than this. But over the last day or two, as I've been working, I've just made a shortish list of things that I like about KDE and things that I like about what I'm doing. It's not exhaustive, it's just quick ideas to give you an idea and to give other people an idea of what it is that I find so effective. So here's the list on the right. In Kate. Kate is itself a brilliant text editor. It's used in lots of different KDE components. I like it because it has a VI mode, a Vim mode, which is great if you're used to using Vim on the console. And here we go with my top of the list, Window Manager. The KDE Window Manager, I think, is a very good part of KDE. It's called KWin. What I like about KWin is that it stays out of the way. Most of the time you don't notice it, like with any window manager, and yet it still manages to have lots of kind of powerful and configurable functionality, like a lot of KDE. If I get rid of the Jack window here, I like the way that windows lock to the middle of the screen. They lock to other window edges. That threshold is editable. I like the way that there are sticky corners to make a window a quarter of a screen or a half a screen, or if I'm careful at the top, it can go to full screen. And as I'm sure you've probably noticed, I also like the way that the compositing on KWin is still kind of slightly infatuated with eye candy. I have wobbly windows on. I like the drop shadows and the glow effects. All these things can be changed and configured. I think probably there's still the option of the cube, the spinning cube that Linux was famous for 8 or 10 years ago. See, I've got slide on at the moment, but let's stick at a cube to see what it's like. I mean, I know it's crazy, but I like the way that KDE still has this kind of functionality, and the way things look is still an important part of what KDE does, even though that is obviously only skin deep. I think it's got the functionality to back it up. And also, for me anyway, the default settings don't really work, but KDE makes it, well, it gives you the options. I was going to say easy enough, but it's not always easy to find where all those options are. So getting back to the window manager, it's the effects, it's the way that you can lock things. The window manager is massively configurable, more configurable than even I've ever dived into. They're the screen edges. There's scripts, you can script things depending on the application type, the window type. You can do things like remove borders to things, re-enable them. You can get very close to turning KDE into a tiling window manager. I use some of these functions by binding shortcuts to lock windows to the sides. I like the way you can push windows to the sides. There are scripts that you can run and get that will turn it into much more like a traditional window manager where you move windows around and everything kind of sticks in this web of windows and you free them. You can perform actions. You can get certain applications to open all the time without a border if that's what you like. I find that useful because I actually work in a full screen environment, usually in the terminal or something like that, and don't really see too much of KDE. So these global shortcuts I think I've kind of covered on in the way that you can assign keys to things. You can change everything about what you can see, removing the border. I've put activities underneath this KWin section. I do use activities slightly, not to any great extent. This, for example, is my work activity. You can see this in the top left. This is the activity that I use in the day to do my job. At the same time, so I do my job in these windows. I've got 4 virtual desktops. You can see them down there in the bottom left. But if I've also got 4 virtual desktops in a parallel activity that I call personal, if I change my mouse wheel and switch over, it switches over to the 4th virtual desktop of the corresponding personal activity. And here it's a convenient place to put things that you might be working on or things that you don't want to be distracted by in one activity or another. That's just the way that I use activities. I find it useful. It's not, you can get certain applications to always load on different activities, for example, and I don't tend to use that, but I do like the modest use of activities. So moving on from the window manager, the next thing on my list is the panel, this thing on the left. I think Unity did this very well, but I think KDE is also very good at the look of a vertical panel. The icons have been well thought out and the functionality within the applets mostly work in a vertical environment. I use a very wide screen display, super wide or ultra wide, so I like to not have any kind of distractions at the bottom of the screen, wasting screen real estate. The fact that KDE supports this vertical configuration, in fact any kind of configuration of multiple panels, is a good advantage for me. I like the way that launch icons only need to exist once. You don't have to have one icon for launching like Unity, and you don't have to have another icon for when the application is running. So if I launch Firefox, for example, it uses the same icon. The icon's just moved here, and you've still got the same context menus that you do for other desktops. So going down the panel, these are this small clock, my launch icons. You can see which things are running, and there's several different instances of them. You get a preview if you hover over it. This is a small applet that links to my download folder and sorts the contents of my download folder according to when those things were downloaded, so I can quickly get to something if it's downloaded in the background. This is Simple Screen Recorder running. This is KDE Connect, a brilliant app on your Android phone and an app on your KDE desktop that links your phone to your desktop. You can see, for example, my battery is discharging and I've got my recent notifications. You can also browse the file system on the phone. Really great tool. Bluetooth, own cloud. The telepathy, KDE's telepathy framework I use, even though instant messaging isn't that cool these days. I use it for its Telegram integration and also for Google Chat. I like the way that this is integrated into the desktop so that I don't have to run a browser all the time if I'm working. The network app is very good. It's great if it works well, for example, with, it looks nice if you actually happen to be doing anything. I'm not doing anything at the moment, but it's nice the way that, just like any other network manager, integrates with VPNs. You can turn on VPNs very quickly and easily. This is Redshift for turning the screen a shade of red as the night draws on. The universal clipboard. This is worth mentioning. These are the global notifications for KDE. What I like about it is that you have granular control over which notifications you see, which applets in the tool tray part of your panel are displayed. Whether that's displayed because there's something to show, or whether you always want them shown, such as KDE Connect, or hidden, such as Solar, which is my Logitech dongle for the keyboard and mouse. Beneath that, I've got just these. I'm slightly obsessed with what my machine is doing and whether it's running crazily in the background when I'm doing other stuff. So CPU, motherboard, and GPU temperature. And these radial dials are for CPU and RAM usage. Beneath that, I've got the virtual desktops that I've already talked about. So I've hinted on it, but the appearance is quite important. I like things to look all right, I guess. This view is the theme I've got is an arc dark theme. I use the Papyrus icon set, Papyrus arc dark, which is a fantastic icon set. It's probably best seen in something like maybe the settings panel. It's a nice flat material light design. Works very well with my kind of inverted color desktop, which I and many people like. It's not so painful on your eyes rather than looking lots of white all day. KDE allows you to tweak all of this. I think more than any other kind of desktop, it gets a bit crazy, but if you have an idea of what you want something to look like, then KDE will usually let you get there. So the appearance is important. I use, I suppose, quite a few Qt applications. I do appreciate the fact that Qt Creator, for example, I do quite a bit in Creator. It's a small thing, but Qt applications feel a little bit more native in KDE. I don't know if it has any kind of system resource advantage at the same time, but the fact that they're using the same framework as the actual KDE desktop seems like an advantage. Going over to a Qt browser is another good example. This is Qt browser, which is a fantastic Vim bindings driven web browser. Lets you use keyboard shortcuts to navigate the web using Qt, using Python Qt. That kind of wraps up the appearance. I thought I would go through a few things that I use, a few of the applications that I use the most, because their integration in the desktop environment helps a little bit, not so much on a per application basis because I still use GTK. I should mention, actually, I skipped over the audio applet, but I think the team have done a brilliant job, the KDE team, of making this almost as functional as the Pulse Audio mixer applet, which you really need to use if you do much messing around with Pulse Audio, because it allows you to specify exactly the sources and the destinations of various audio and applications and recording devices. KDE's audio applet now seems to mimic almost all the functionality of the original, which I like. So getting back to the application, something you might have seen me use quite a bit is this Plasma search bar at the top. You can do lots of cool stuff in here, like simple sums and complicated sums, and even things like today's date. You can instantiate chats with people in your messenger list. You can, it's got a plugin system that allows you to do all kinds of things. It's a bit like GNOME Do. GNOME Do was the first time I saw this done. Was it Quicksilver on the Mac? Those seem to have died out a little bit, but I use this for launching and accessing everything in the FOSS system. It's brilliant at searching, your text documents. It's brilliant at doing text shortcuts. If I go over to my personal activity, you can do things like, if I do a Google for Linux voice, get it to load in your default browser, and it does all kinds of things. You can do Wikipedia entries. I was going to put Theresa May in there, but I'll just do Linux. Brilliant for stuff like that. Lots of different kinds of plugins and not so much effects, but you can disable them and re-enable them if you don't need them. I use Plasma Search all the time. I think it's called Plasma Search now. It's changed names over the years. Good application. And really, I think something that doesn't get enough credit is Dolphin. Dolphin is the file manager. I think the best file manager I've ever used. It's powerful. It's modifiable. For example, here I've got rid of the menu just like anything else in KDE. Does everything I need to. I used to love Conqueror, but Dolphin's finally got to the state. It doesn't allow multiple splits, but things like split views, the way you can connect to a remote site. I'm connecting to my online server here with Fish, the SSH protocol that KDE uses. The fact that I can drag things over from remote sites really easy. I know nearly every other file manager does it, but I love the way this is all integrated so well into KDE. So too with the semantic desktop here, recently saved documents, you can do all kinds of magical weird stuff like that. I also like the context menus. They seem to be a lot more sensible than other desktop environments. So for example, I think I downloaded some fonts. Let's have a look. Yes, here you are. And one of the examples I like is I can just select fonts and I can install them all with just one click here. KDE has a well-chosen selection of actions to perform on things, or the applications that you install are well integrated with the desktop anyway. Another thing I like about Dolphin is the way that you can, let's have a look at some pictures, the way that you can see it's fast. So here I'm increasing the size in real time. There's all kinds of preview options. The toolbar here has lots of secret functionality you don't notice. So for example, image size is something I find really useful. It's actually appeared on the left of the screen. Move this over here. The resolution, where is it? Did I just hide it? Here it is. Image size. This is the resolution of these raw images off my camera. That's, you know, that's right there in the browser. I really like that. There's loads of brilliant things about Dolphin that I like that make it a wonderful file manager and keep me from using the command line, which is generally a good thing sometimes. Console is worth a shout out as well. I'm using it here, WeChat and IRC here with tmux. It's fast, it's capable of excellent numbers of colors. I use it also in Yakwake, which is this drop-down menu. Not drop-down menu, but drop-down terminal. It's just perfect. I like the way that console is integrated into KDE so tightly. Things with the themes tying up. I mean, I think Yakwake's even got a theme of somebody's gone to the trouble of creating an Arc Dark theme for Yakwake. Thank you, that person. Really lovely integration. Kate, I've already mentioned. These are some of the other some of the other applications I use. Critter, fantastic graphical editor. System activities, control and escape brings up a really nice quick monitor to see what things are running. System monitor itself is a more fully fledged cases guard application. Nice rendering, but what I really like about it is you can create a new tab. And here, if I had KDE running on a different machine on the network, I could add a different machine and drag in the same kind of monitoring statistics from those sites, from those machines into this machine, so I could monitor what they're doing. I'm trying to drag something over here now, but that's not a very exciting thing to look at. It's a great tool for monitoring, simple but brilliant, and there's lots of stuff like that. Spectacle's worth mentioning. This is something I take a lot of screenshots with. Works really nicely. I've got a delay on it because I always have to get things out of the way. What was the delay? Was it just a few seconds? There we go. I like the way Spectacle has a sensible renaming policy where you don't really have to think of the name, it just does it. File light for sizes. This is nice. It's nice and quick, and you get to see everything in your system, see what's taking up all of the space in a lovely little kind of bit of rendering. Something that Marble is another great application that we should, just like Google Earth, but totally open source. Lots of open source kind of layers you can install. Really great educational tool for seeing things about the planet. So here's File Light. It's got all things that I've got on my system. And then finally, I suppose it's not so exciting, but the foundation of KDE is the fact that it's so configurable, and we've touched on this quite a few times now already, the fact that you can change almost everything. Keyboard shortcuts, where are the global shortcuts? Shortcuts for everything, all in one integrated place, as long as they plug their panels in. Lots of shortcuts for KWin even. This is how you control things like that, and shortcuts I'm using for switching between desktops. You can change keyboard shortcuts for almost anything. I like that. There's even a crazy gesture mode. Where is this? Where you can create, you can draw gestures that act as shortcuts. I mean, these kind of features are never written about. Is there any KDE documentation for them? I don't know. I've mentioned keyboard configuration because I found that very useful. I've got a bit of a weird Logitech keyboard and like the fact that I can change the keyboard settings and see previews of the settings. It doesn't actually show me at the moment. Where is it? Here. Small things like this, small, see, just really useful. File associations, a bit of a random thing to finish on, but the fact that you can, the reason why, for example, I load things up in Qt Browser, GGI, Amiga 4000. So I'm going to Google for the Amiga 4000 image. The fact that I can do that is because I can so easily change the file associations for HTML to Qt Browser, which is the browser that I use most of the time. And it's that kind of power, the configurability, and the way that KDE looks, all combined with the applications that I use are mostly Qt and KDE driven, that makes me stick with KDE and makes me have a slight preference for it over other things. That's it. Trying to be quick. I could probably say so much more, but I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for listening. Bye.